Here.
She won't attend today.
Here.
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 All right. Is there any public comment? Is there anybody here to make a public comment? I don't see anybody. Do you have any?
No, ma'am, we did not receive any comments.
Thank you very much. Okay. Are there any corrections to the minutes? And anyone who wants to?
I wasn't here last week, but
You asking?
nah, I was on.
Okay. So are there any corrections to the minute? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Second.
Mr. Wilson, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. No?
No.
I think
I was
Aye.
turning the phone off.
You were saying no to the no, so we say yes.
Ms. Olivari, could you turn your microphone on? They're not hearing you in the back.
it was? Okay.
There you go.
I can hear myself. Sorry. Okay, the financial reports, please.
Good afternoon. Alma Casas, Interim Director of Finance. So we have the, it doesn't want to advance. Let me see. Oh, there it goes. Okay. So these are the financials for Type B, 8 months ended May 31st. We had a beginning fund balance of $12.5 million. Revenues of $6.3 million. Expenditures year to date, $1 million. And ending fund balance of $17.8 million. But from that $17.8 million, we still have to deduct all of the commitments. So those are shown on the bottom part of the page. Can you advance the slide, please? Thank you. Expenditures, we have for affordable housing, $11,676. Economic development, $1,010,540. And streets, $24,480. Next slide, please.
Oh, just 1 second, please.
Yes,
Mr.
ma'am.
Voss has a question.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Madam President. Can you go back to the commitments?
The first page?
Yes,
She's
Yes,
gonna
sir.
show us all.
right there.
Okay.
So that total equals what? The commitments equal what?
The commitments will follow on the following pages. They'll broken down by affordable housing, economic development, and streets.
Okay, and when do those get taken out?
Well, we're paying them out
As
as...
it goes?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
okay, thank you.
Uh-huh. So we'll go to the next slide, please. Thank you. Affordable housing. So we estimate at the end of the fiscal year, we'll have 1.1 million in estimated available balance to be able to commit. And the projects that we have right now are the infill, which is $1 million, and the Alma at Greenwood for 1.191871. Moving on to economic development. We estimate at the end of the year, we're going to have 10.9 million. And those projects that we have committed are for South Texas Botanical Gardens, Next Sports Company, LLC, Tamu CC, Unmanned Aircraft Systems, and small business contracts. Next slide, please. Streets. This is the transfer. So at the end of this year, we expect that we're going to have $388,000. That's after we make the transfer for street CIP of $4.1 million. And that concludes, sales tax update. So sales tax, we're actually trending up. We're doing really well. We're over budget of $251,000 so far. And that's through May. Any questions?
Are there any questions of the board? Oh, thank you, Ms. Casas.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the next item. We don't have any executive sessions, so the next will be a resolution reaffirming the Corpus Christi B Corporation's investment policy and investment strategy for FY 2023-2024 with no substantive amendments. Ms. Casas.
Yes. So the Public Funds Investment Act requires that we bring every year to the governing board the policies and strategies that we will be implementing for the following year. We didn't have any changes to last year's policy, and so this is just reaffirming the policies and strategies that we already have in place.
Second.
Second by Mr. Robert Temes. Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next one is an authorizing amendment of the bylaws of the Corpus Christi B Corporation to provide for automatic resignation of a director in the event of an unexcused absence.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Amy Alcorn, Assistant City Attorney. We talked about this a little bit last month. We're trying to get a policy in place to deal with our unexcused absences. The only thing I changed since last month was I added a sentence that explains kind of how to request your absence be excused. If you miss a meeting, you can either request an excused absence at the next meeting, or if, for example, you're also going to miss the next meeting, you can send a written request to the city secretary's office with a copy to the president and your city staff liaison, which is Joe Escobar. And that way we all know that you're requesting the absence and we can get that on the agenda. Any other questions?
Mr. Voss?
Yeah, thank you. Amy,
So under
Is it
the
just-
city policy, it's left up to the board.
Okay.
So we would, currently, the way this is written tracks the city policy, so whatever the board wants to set. I think we talked last month that if we wanted to make guidelines for that, we could. I would recommend putting those in your rules of procedure as opposed to your bylaws. The bylaws are more of the overarching document because it involves an automatic resignation. I think it needed to go in the bylaws, but I don't think city council needs to be reviewing our details on what we consider excused and what we don't consider excused.
I don't,
Excuse me, Mr. Voss, can you turn your microphone on?
sorry.
Thank you.
You know, I don't ask for an excused absence if I'm out for a personal reason. If I'm out for a business reason, then I will ask for an excused absence. So we just going to have to decide amongst ourselves?
Yeah, I think typically in the past on this board, it's been either if it's health-related or if it's business-related, they've typically considered it excused. I don't know that we typically excuse personal travel on this
Okay.
board.
And what is the number of unexcused absences that would cause
It's
automatic
25%.
25%?
So if we meet 12 times a year, which we typically meet 10 or 12 times a year, you have to miss 4.
And
So it's
these
more
are-
than 25%.
And these would be at regularly scheduled meetings, right?
Correct, regular
Okay.
meetings.
Okay,
And,
okay.
and then the
Thank you.
council has the ability to reappoint you if they
That's
feel
correct.
like there's a reason that was substantially.
So even if you do end up automatically resigning, you can apply to get your position back and council can put you
Right.
back on.
So would y'all like to see something added to the rules and procedures that kind of specify what qualifies? Mr. Harris?
I've got a question. Is that a rolling year or a calendar year or a fiscal year?
Fiscal year.
Fiscal
Yeah,
year.
fiscal year is how it's usually handled, I think,
Okay.
but your terms start October 1, so you're on fiscal year terms, so it makes sense to do
Okay.
it that way.
Now we'll all be on, yeah.
Do we need
No.
to clarify that?
So do we want her to bring forward maybe next month or for the new board, to just put a document what we're defining as an excused versus unexcused?
So there are a couple ways we can do that. We can put an item on next month to talk about what you want to call excused or unexcused. If you have a pretty good idea of what your line is, if it's kind of what I said, that business or health versus personal travel, I can put that together. But if you
Okay.
need more, if you want more specifics than that, I would need to know before I wrote it.
Okay, in the fiscal year?
Right.
Scott, Mr. Harris? Yes, Mr. Wilson?
So you're recommending, and I think staff recommended that we adopt the city council policy?
Correct.
Well, it's our own policy
Yeah.
because but it's.
But it-
Same terms.
Yeah, it mirrors the city council policy. That's
So I would make a motion that we adopt the city council's terms and conditions of the automatic resignation.
With the one exception, which is that we can notify in writing, because that's not in their council.
The city council policy doesn't have the written notification
okay.
exception, so we added that last month.
Okay. Well,
Okay.
I'll amend my motion to include that.
Okay. I have, oh, Mr. Voss, do I have a second? Let me get a second.
I'll second it.
Okay.
I'd like to offer a friendly amendment. I don't necessarily want to copy the city council's policy. I want us to just have our own, even though it's the same. I mean, because if they change theirs, then
That's right.
we would be under those terms.
The
rather
motion
than it-
that's-
Rather than it coming back
No,
to us
it-
for
it-
consideration.
It is our policy.
Right.
Yeah, the motion that's on the agenda doesn't reference the city council policy.
Okay,
It's just a
perfect.
motion
Perfect.
to amend the bylaws.
But Mr. Wilson's motion was to mirror the city council's
correct.
policy. So I would like an amendment there.
So you want to just move to approve the motion that's on the agenda?
Correct.
So you're happy with that?
Yeah.
Looks like Mr.
Well,
Wilson.
because if they change
I-
their policy, then,
You're right.
okay.
All those in favor? And let me just restate, so what we are adopting, without getting too formal about it, is a new set of procedures that demonstrate what, or discuss absences and what happens. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? No? Say no. Hearing none, motion passes. Motion to approve the Corporation B fiscal year 2023-24 operating budget for economic development, housing, and streets.
Good afternoon, board members. Eddie Houlihan with the Office of Management and Budget. I'm going to go over the proposed budget with you. A couple changes from June. I'll point those out. From a high level, the economic development area, in FY22, we ended with almost a $10 million fund balance in this area. In FY23, we expect to end the fiscal year with $12,438,000 in fund balance, and carrying that forward, expect to end fiscal year 24 with about $13.1 million in fund balance. So there's been no changes in the revenues since June. So the estimate for sales tax for FY24 is $4,447,663, and then interest income of about $325,000 for the total revenues of $4,773,000. Next slide. And then on the expenditure side, the economic development, this does include the $150,000 that we discussed last time for the development services liaison to help with that process through the development services area. The major business incentives, there was $1 million math error there, but it's the same two areas, the next sports complex and the A&M drone program, totaling $2,590,000. In the small business projects, we did add another $50,000 for the Texas A&M intern program. It increased the total there from $1,018,000 to $1,068,000. And then the business, some admin of $10,000, and then the transfer to the general fund for general fund support of a little over $68,000, for total expenditures of $4,101,000. There's just a detail of the major business incentives that I mentioned, the sports complex and the drone program. Next slide. And here's where we added in the June meeting, we had $100,000 for the Texas A&M internship, and we increased that to $150,000. And all the other items remained the same from June.
Could you go back one slide, please? Okay, there's something else in here I just want to take note of, which is the LIFT fund. So keep going forward.
Can you go back to, you want to keep going forward?
Yeah.
Okay. Then there's a botanical garden for the $89,000 that we don't expect to expend this current year, and so we moved it to FY24. And here's a slide on the development service liaison. We get into the housing area.
Yeah, let
I've
it,
got a question.
Okay.
yeah. You
Should
want to
I
do it
ask
now,
after
or
this
why don't we
presentation?
get through that?
Okay.
Yeah,
I'll ask afterwards.
because I have some from Diane, too.
Okay. So we didn't have there weren't any changes from the housing program from June. Total revenues of $556,000 and expenditures of $2,542,565. A little more detail on that. Next slide, please. So sales tax of the $500,000, and then a small amount of interest income of $56,000. So $556,000 there in revenues for the housing area. Next slide. Then affordable housing of $2,500,000. Admin of 10, and then a general fund support of $32,565. Next slide. So the Almec Greenwood of $1,191,000, and then other projects as they come up of $1,308,000, totaling the $2.5 million for affordable housing projects. Don't have anything budgeted. Next slide. For the infill housing, 23 we budgeted $500,000, and we expect to spend $200,000. And have any budget for FY24 in this area? In the streets, there were no change here. The revenues of $3,951,708, and then expenditures of $4,384,000. Next slide. There's a sales tax of $3,947,000, and interest income of a little over $4,000, totaling the $3,951,000. Next slide. So admin of 10, transfer to the general fund of $47,000 for general fund support. And then the street CIP, we did have the $4,327,000, but we do have a recommendation in the June meeting. It was to be determined. The $1,000,002, if you remember, the 22 number was Elizabeth Street. In the FY23, the $4,149,000 was the industrial area streets behind Bill Witt. And then lastly, the $4,327,000 budgeted in FY24. Next slide. We all recommended that those funds be utilized for the Williams Drive extension from Rodfield to Lexington. So I'll stand by for any questions.
Okay, Mr. Harris.
So you're proposing putting in the budget an assistant for economic development services coordinator, describe that
Right.
position.
I'll let Heather give you some additional information on that.
Good afternoon, Heather Holbert, Assistant City Manager. This position would actually sit within the Economic Development Department. It would not sit in Development Services, and it would be a liaison. For lack of a better word, we're still fleshing out what exactly that job description will be that will help businesses help navigate the development services process. Some of the feedback that we've gotten as we've talked to our partnering agencies along with other people going through that process is that process can be very confusing, especially for people who don't do it on a regular basis. And so this was a recommendation we brought forward to help with that process to get smaller businesses or those that maybe don't do this on a regular basis through that development process so that they can do whatever they need to do.
Has the city hired an economic development director yet? Position's advertised?
Well, I'm the interim director, but we are in the process of looking for a permanent director, so yes,
That position's still,
it is.
there's still a search going on.
Yes, exactly.
She was, but then she got promoted.
Mr. Harris, I don't think your microphone's on.
I rarely make that mistake, sorry. Okay, so that was my first question, was on that position. My second question is infill housing. I noticed there's no budget for infill housing for the next fiscal year. What's going on with that program? Why are we not putting a budget together for that? And what incentives are the city providing to developers to do developments, infill developments, rather than developing way out in the middle of nowhere and continuing that?
Sure. Good afternoon, Constance Sanchez. So we had been working with the developers on the current program that we have in place. And in discussing it with them, we realized that the restrictions that are tagged on with the Type B funding prohibits them from utilizing the fund. So that's why nothing has been utilized. So the Housing Department now is reviewing the entire process to see what sort of programs will be most beneficial to the developers going forward for fiscal '24.
Okay,
So that's why we have 0 for that one particular line item.
okay, I understand. And then the last question is Williams Drive. Is there an economic development component to that project? Businesses, something that's going to be, what's the need there for economic development?
So that, we have identified that area as we have a lot of challenges because that Williams Drive doesn't come through in with a lot of the drainage and stormwater problems. In the recent FEMA flood maps, a lot of that area, which is a large undeveloped area, which is prime for economic development projects to go into, there's a back corner of it that is now in the flood zone, and so it does present challenges with activating that property. And so in discussions with several of our developers and several people who've come in to look at that area, we felt like this was a good use to be able to activate that and help eliminate that problem, make that connection there, because that is one of our larger pieces of undeveloped land along SPID and is, I think, vital in our economic development journey.
Okay.
I have questions from Ms. Summers on the same thing, but let me hear what everyone else has to say.
I'll wait till you're finished.
Anybody else? Okay, so let's start with infill housing. She wanted to express the same concerns about why there had only been 200,000 out of 500. I think one of the things that she and I discussed is the possibility of really having a presentation in the next couple of months from the housing people. We haven't heard much about them lately. The second part of that is I understand that one of the issues, and this may be something for our legal to take a look at, is there was some idea that the HUD standards or the HUD income applies, and I don't understand why. So we'd like to
The
find out more.
section of the state law that authorizes Type B funds to be used for affordable housing defines affordable housing as such projects that are approved by Chapter 42, and I can't remember the exact section of
Okay.
the U.S. Code, and that is the section that has the income guidelines.
Okay, so
And-
it's
and the sales
state
price
that,
restriction.
that drew into,
Right,
thank
the
you.
state grabbed the, so a lot of HUD requirements don't apply, but that one does. So
it's almost an insurmountable challenge as long as that is still in the state law.
Correct. It has become problematic, but that is the state law that we have.
So,
Go ahead.
sorry, to add to that, so does infill housing have to be an affordable housing project through Type B? Can it be an economic development or a special project or something else?
Good
Why
point.
are we pigeonholing it into to affordable housing and
It's-
putting those guidelines on it?
It's difficult to argue that housing is a Type B project unless it's affordable. Type B projects are specifically to drive new and expanded business enterprises. So it's difficult to argue that a market rate housing development is going to encourage new business enterprises in the city. Affordable housing is allowed because the state law specifically allows it. So that's why we've been able to spend it on affordable housing.
And it also was in the ballot as such, right? It was 500,000 was
It
allocated
was affordable.
for affordable housing. Mhm.
But what he's saying is that money may stay there, but it's not that we
It's-
couldn't do anything about housing
Yeah, or
perhaps
it's
with.
The
a good
economic
argument,
development
and-
portion of the funds.
Right, it's a good argument, and we can see if we can find a place for it to fit, but it's not an easy answer on that one, because it's not something that would traditionally be considered as new and expanded business enterprises.
Okay.
So let me give you an idea. So I've been talking on a project I'm working on in the Valley, Come Dream, Come Build. And the way they're doing some of this is they are coordinating with TSTC, I believe, or UT, RGV, and they're using it as a job training component. So they get people to build the houses. They then become, anyway, it's just something to think outside the box. I think she and I both kind of think maybe it's time to think a little broader, smaller homes, different home approaches. If we try to just build standard single family, we may never get there with this money and what's happened with inflation. JJ? Did you have a?
Yeah, no, I was just kind of mind thinking about, you see the concerns. I was asking John, they said limited to, does it have to be tied to housing? One of the things before coming to this board, I was in the Capital Improvements Advisory Committee. And one of the things that were in the, middle of working on when I left that board to come here was actually there is a map that was being developed that shows where all the infill locations are within the city. So I kind of, I want to, second what Madam President mentioned about maybe getting a presentation out here. I know the map is out there, and yeah, just the hurdles going to be, does it have to be housing? Does it have to be affordable housing? Yeah, so it's.
That was the mandate on the ballot.
Yeah.
Because there is a lot, I remember when we're working on that map or being presented with those maps, there is a lot of infill space within the city, that can be utilized, but then it would be good to see where it's at and where the housing would fit. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Voss.
Thank you. Can you go back to the internship programs? I think it was on here somewhere.
There it is. Whoops. That's it.
So why is the A&M program going up $50,000? As far as I can remember, those internship programs typically struggled, to utilize the entire amount of the funds. So now, all of a sudden, it's going up that much. I mean, if the program is just taken off, great. I mean.
Sure. My understanding is that A&M does feel that, or does seem like they're going to expend their full amount this year. And so they are asking for more, I guess, as we came out of COVID. They've had more success. They've done a lot more marketing for the program. And so my understanding is that they expect to fully expend their fiscal year 23 budget. And so they've asked for additional funding in 24.
Okay. Then what is their actual expenses to date for fiscal year 23?
I do not have that information.
They gave that to us they're here. Yeah, they were here last month, and let me stop and just say one thing. Last time they came and gave us a great presentation, but we asked for some additional information before we agreed to this, and both Ms. Summers and myself feel like that has not gotten to the point that we're ready to say yes to 50,000. We asked for, she is particularly concerned that there be some metrics and more detail on who got, which we did not have in the packet. I saw something, but, where they have people placed now, where they thought the need was. And so what I'd like to suggest is that we not include this at this point, but please come back next month and we'll kind of amend the budget. Because that gets you, we're not saying no. It's just we didn't say yes last time, and we're not going to say yes just by suddenly slipping in $50,000. So if you have any comments on that, feel free. I saw that email, and I sent one back. Saying I did not think that this would answer the questions, nor did that email go to the board. It just went to me. I don't really share things like that. So I think that needs to be information before we approve that $50,000. But
Yeah, and-
I'm one person here.
Leslie Mills with
Yes, thank
Texas
you, Ms.
A&M
Mills.
Corpus Christi. I'm the executive director for the Career Center and oversee this program. And so I had shared information with Mike, and I apologize, I thought it was getting forwarded on to the board. But one of the things, so this year where we are currently standing, you're correct. We had some issues previously coming out of COVID. Last time earlier this year, we had met and requested in January that we were able to increase the minimum wage from the $12.50 it was an hour because we were struggling to have students apply for those positions. We've now increased it to the $14.25 an hour. with that, those positions are not only getting filled, they're getting filled sooner within the semester. So students are spending more of the funds, or we are able to utilize more of the funds for that. In fall alone, we spent, spring alone, we spent 54,449. And so that was an increase in interns, but we also did increase the amount, bless you. We did increase the amount per hour, so we had 31 interns in the fall. Currently this summer, we have 14 interns who are working. We're still processing invoices right now, so don't have an estimate of what they're spending this summer. But at that $100,000 mark, that left us with, we spent 54 of that in the spring. So,
Well,
and then we have.
Let me stop you real quick. So the spring ends May.
May.
Okay. The fiscal year here starts in October, so it's not,
This is January.
Ours is,
Oh, yours is-
yes,
okay.
Yeah,
yes,
it's
sir.
off.
Ours is
It's off
January,
kilter.
yeah.
Yeah.
Ours is a little off. And then it's off from my semesters and how I normally think, so that even throws me off, but yeah.
Okay.
So
Okay.
just spring, so that, our funds started in January of 2023, that 100,000.
Okay.
And in spring alone, we spent that $54,000. We have 14 interns currently working, and the good news is we brought those interns on earlier in the summer, and so they've been able to utilize more of the funds this summer. And then if we are able to continue as projected, right now in the pipeline, we have an estimated 37 interns projected for fall to work. And so that would put us over the $54,000 mark that we were able to spend or utilize in spring.
Okay.
So
How many of those are employed at the university?
there's the two that we have according to the grant that help us run the program in our office, and then the Coastal Bend Innovation Center, they were able to utilize two because of them supporting small businesses.
So
That's
10
it.
of them are with businesses and 4 of them are with the
Oh,
university?
the 14, out of the 14?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, right now this summer, only, we have 2, and then the Coastal Bend Innovation Center has 1 this summer.
And one is at
the 11 are
at the
with.
chamber, correct?
The chamber has 2 this summer,
Okay.
2 this summer.
So I think,
well, if I could
go
finish.
ahead, I'm sorry.
I mean, that's what I'm looking for. I mean, because in the past few years, it's always been really short. And, you know,
Correct.
we've even said, hey, you budget 100,000 every year, you're only spending 20. Let's get to the actual numbers. But I'm glad to see that, I mean, I hope it hits that number.
Yeah.
How about, and this is not for you, but Heather, how about Del Mar? Is Del Mar doing as, you know, great a job as they're doing?
Mike Culbertson with your regional EDC. Del Mar is doing well, and not as well as A&M. They're looking for 115, and they're also looking for help for this current year. So we had information, and we sent it through, and we were hoping to meet with another board member because there were questions. You know, she had answered everything we wanted. So we want to make sure that we have everything that you, the board, needs to go through that and make your decision. I feel, you know, you know, we're finally turning the corner on this, and you know, we're short. Well, we're short because I will grant you 2019 was a great year, but after that, you know, we've been struggling. So finally, they're used to go. Just a quick thing, when Mr. Thomas started, I mean, we were at, gosh, 200 and something, 225,000 apiece, and they were using all of that. So this is a, you know, a great turnaround. You know, there are a lot of companies, and we mark those companies when we do compliance on those. I'm just trying to make sure that we have everything that you need to make a good decision. But I got to tell you, this is a great program that's really coming into its own. And I think part of the problems is with the higher wages that you have to pay, they really need help, number one. And number two, this is just a great place to have students and working in their major. So we will have that for you before next month. And I will say that not only are we going to talk about the budget, but we're also going to talk about the budget for this year, and have something
Right.
for you to decide on.
Okay.
I want to finish.
Okay. I'm sorry.
So and that's great, Mike, and I know you always bring us credible programs, and, so does that mean that the Del Mar internship is gonna go up by 15,000 as well?
They are going to ask.
They're gonna ask, okay.
They had a request, but it came in very late.
Okay,
you
that's
know,
fine,
and-
that's fine,
yeah.
but I'm sure that Ms. Keys or whoever will come and represent, just.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, they will be here. They were here last.
Okay, okay, wonderful. Last question. Is there any tracking mechanism to see how many of these folks in these internship programs where they're actually translating into full-time jobs?
So we
In the
do-
area.
Yes, so we do survey the employers at the end of the year to ask them how many positions were converted. And so they were based on how many reply and how many cooperate with us. But this last year in spring of 2023, 3 interns were converted to full-time employees.
Okay. Now, when you say if they cooperate with you, I would just suggest that you make that a requirement of being in the program, that once the program ends, that they fill out a survey that says, hey, otherwise,
Yeah.
You know.
Mr. Chairman,
okay, thank you, appreciate that.
Temez.
Dr. Miller came before us about 2 months ago, and she brought us up to date on all this questions we're asking right now. And I thought we had approved the budget
We didn't
at
at that
150.
point.
We did?
No, they just brought us, and Ms. Summers' questions were exactly kind of what you were going through. I guess there's always a understanding of what you mean by metrics, but she used the term over and over again, and I think what she's wanting to know is how many of them actually achieved full-time employment, how many went into full-time employment in whatever the internship. It was more than just, oh, here's a list of, although that would be probably answer some of her questions as well.
And on this one document that I'll provide all of you, it not only lists, it lists how many we have participating, but also lists how many part-time jobs were created, reported to us, and how many full-time jobs were created, reported to us, and then how many interns were converted into full-time positions. And so, like I said, that was for spring. That metrics is for spring, that 3 interns were converted into full-time positions in spring.
But that's based only on the survey. It could be more than that.
That was based on the information we gathered. That was more than the survey. That was them reaching out. The full-time and part-time jobs created just in general. Just finding out how many that company added on as a result of, we're just hoping that by us assisting and providing some extra support for these businesses, that they're able to grow and expand. And so they were reporting the part-time jobs and the full-time jobs by report of the survey. And then the conversion of the interns to the full-time position, those were by us reaching out to those employers one-on-one. Surveys were more email, and they answered on a
So that's a
hoc
little,
basis, I guess you
I
could
mean,
say.
it is a little confusing if you bear with me for a second. So what you're saying is an employer may have added a full-time job or a part-time job, but it might not necessarily have anything to do with the intern.
correct. Those
Okay.
were separate, but the 3, those were the interns. Correct.
I would make the survey a part of
Yes, sir.
the program. What was your last thing? What was your return rate on the surveys?
I don't have that number in front of me.
I
but
mean,
can
you
get
had
that for you.
33,
Yeah, I can get that
33
for you.
groups out there.
I can get that for you. We had 20 business partners in the spring, and I can find out what the
I don't
response
need
is.
it, I just
Yeah.
want you to understand
Less
that.
than 15%.
Yeah.
No, I understand.
Okay.
Or 15%. Mr. Temez, did you have any comments? Okay, and then the other thing that, besides housing, the other thing I wanted to mention is the development services. I think it's very difficult for myself or Ms. Summers to support this at this point. I think it just needs, it may be a really great idea. It could be, but it's not clear either what the job description is or even what the real budget is for it, what kind of person you'd be looking for, how you thought that it might improve, how it would actually coordinate with development services. And so it's a little bit it's a little fuzzy to do at this point. I know you and I spoke about, we'll just go ahead and put it in the budget, and then we'll come back and we'll get to approve all that. The question I put to y'all as a board is, do you want to include it in the budget now, or do you want to wait and say, give us the meat on the bones with the metrics? This is how many people we might be able to process. Here's how, before we approve it.
May I?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So Heather, are you expecting or wanting us to approve this budget today? All these items today? I mean, do you need them today?
Yes, because we will, the city manager is preparing the presentation to council on the proposed budget on July 25th. 27th.
Okay.
Yeah, next
Okay.
Tuesday. And so what my request was is to go ahead and allow it to be included in the budget, because we need to add a head count and then have the funding. And then before we spend any of the money, in essence, then we would come back with a more complete program of what the job description would look like, what we're looking for in qualifications, and what type of matrices, instead of doing the work and then possibly bringing it back and not having it, not having it have to come amend the budget. Because if we were to do that, we would have to come back and not only amend the type B budget, but we'd also have to amend the city's budget, because we'd have to add the head count for us to be able to hire into it.
I mean, yeah, because I would like for this board, I'm just speaking for myself, but hopefully the board would agree, to be involved in that process, to know what this person's getting, like, just like what Ms. Olivari said.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm comfortable leaving it in the budget and then reviewing the position. And it doesn't mean you're going to hire them October 1.
No.
They may not come on board until March.
Exactly.
So if that's the case, then you've technically really only spent half of the money.
Exactly.
For
Exactly.
that fiscal year.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with that. If you're expecting us to approve this budget today, I'm fine with that. I would like to amend the Del Mar College amount to add the additional $15,000 for them.
Okay.
And go from there.
So you're basically making a motion to approve the budget as presented with the addition of $15,000 for Del Mar?
Right.
Is that your motion?
Right, yeah, because I want to support the $50,000 for A&M, which I do, and she gave a great presentation, and those numbers are exactly what we need, and hopefully Del Mar will do the same. Otherwise, we'll just take it away. But that would be my motion.
Okay.
Because I know you've got to get this to the council, and
Okay, any further discussion? Now, that's clearly with the understanding that nobody will be hired, or we
Yes.
won't move forward without it coming back.
Exactly.
And that you will be back next month with additional information in terms of the metrics that
That's
we're
correct.
looking for.
For both A&M and Del
Corpus.
Mar.
Yeah.
And I was going to add just a reminder that while, even though we may include that money in the budget, we still have to, you'll still have to approve the contract. So at that point, we can make sure
Right.
that the
point.
required matrices or qualifications are in those contracts before we award the contract. So that's the way the money gets spent, basically, is through the contracts, so.
Okay. So there's a motion on the floor and a second. Is there any more discussion?
did somebody second?
Mr. Thomas? Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. I only have,
Is that a no?
no, no, it passed.
No, I mean, is your vote a no?
No, my vote is not,
you just
my
saying-
vote is yes.
Oh, you were just saying no,
Okay,
okay.
no.
Thank you.
I'll,
you,
I'll,
Heather.
I'll pass that along to my fellow board member. I do have one comment, and it has to do, because we're not in charge of picking these streets, but I have to offer this. I understand about the FEMA, but the question was, normally, if you're developing a street, the owner of the property adjacent would have to pay 50%. Are they agreeing to 50%? Does any, Mr. City Manager?
Bill, what area?
No, this is the Lexington to Williams.
We have not even, this is just, we haven't entered into any of those discussions or negotiations yet, so.
The second part of this, just as it's something, last time when you brought forward the industrial subdivision, you stated some metrics about, and you'll see the theme metrics. So about why that was selected, the number
Sure.
of businesses, what you thought the outcome would be. Nothing you know, there doesn't seem to be anything similar. There's no sales tax yet anywhere in this area. There's no traffic because the road is not really a
Exactly.
road.
Yeah.
So there was a little confusion over exactly why you would select when there are many other streets
Sure.
that have existing sales taxpayers that need rehabilitation. So I'll just make that comment.
And we can definitely, as we continue fleshing this out, we will bring this forward for more detail to
Well,
the board.
Again, this is the city council and the city staff's decision, but it just seems like we're straying a little bit away from, you know, maybe the idea of the money going into streets.
Sure.
Well, but not if we're funding it, then it's our decision.
Well, that's not the rules we set up. We said it comes through us, but the decision as to which streets would
Right.
be that of the staff and the city
Right,
council. So
but whatever they bring doesn't mean we have to approve it.
I guess not.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything that Leah just said. There's not a whole lot out there. I live in that area, and I've been out there. So I don't really know how much it's gonna generate. I personally would rather, I don't know if we'd have to really be creative. I would rather see that money go to widen Yorktown all the way past them to Waldron. You know, there's a specs that opened up out there. There's a really nice stripes that opened up out there. So that corridor is prime for more commercial development. But it's a 2-lane with 2 ditches. It's dangerous. So I don't know if Peter has already that section, you know, in design to be improved or not, because more people would benefit from that stretch being improved in this area.
This is, right, and Heather probably explained it, and I'm sorry I joined you all late, but this stretch has more economic development potential than Yorktown in the segment that you talked about. Maybe that's one difference there. But Yorktown, just for your information, is fully designed and construction to be awarded soon. That will be from Rodfield all the way to what we know as the Mud Bridge. And so it's a $20 million project.
Okay,
We
great.
did it
That's
in
already-
in 2
okay.
bond programs. It was designed in 2020, and then we have $20 million in the 2022 bond program.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
wonderful. As long as it's getting done.
Yeah, that's getting done.
Mr. Wilson?
So I just want to be clear, this street will be the backside of Rodfield Road to Lexington
Yes.
and has SPID. It's the place that everybody thought maybe Costco was going to go.
Yes.
Yeah.
So high value,
High value.
Yes.
value.
Yes.
With a
Extremely.
willing seller.
yeah.
Yes.
Right.
But people are not going to want to develop if it's a floodplain.
Well, that's why it hasn't developed yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's,
So I just want to make sure there's a lot of potential in that property.
exactly. We agree.
Yeah,
Oh,
so there's,
well,
there's
There's
been-
more history on this project,
yeah.
yes.
And this, Heather may have mentioned also, but this is probably a fifth, maybe a fourth of the total infrastructure cost. There has to be some substantial drainage work that has to be done, and then the road work itself. So this certainly is not the project cost, but it's a good start. We've been working with the landowners for a couple of years now, but it's that issue of the price and how do you fit them to priorities of the city. Williams Drive, the city did a great job back in the day when they did build it. It's a nice concrete street, and for some reason they stopped it there. This will take it all the way to the end with the appropriate drainage and street section.
But on the south side of it is nothing but houses, correct?
That's correct. Yeah. Single family, multifamily, but on the, I guess the north side of it is expansive commercial development.
We don't approve it, really.
It also provides an additional contiguous outlet for vehicular traffic. If you don't want to go on SBID, you can use Williams, parallels it.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Thank you, Madam President.
So with that, the executive director's report.
Yes, just to, again, remind the Type B board here that next week we will be presenting the city's budget. I will, as recommended or as necessary in the city charter. The city manager presents a proposed budget to council so many days before the fiscal year. So next Tuesday at the city council meeting, that'll be one of the first items up on the agenda. And then the 6th week of community dialogue and deliberation, as well as city council deliberation and dialogue. We'll have 6 city council work sessions right here in the city council chambers, and then we'll have 5 community input sessions, as well as some public hearings here during city council meetings. So we encourage the community, our partners out there, to let us know what they think about the budget. And ultimately, city council will adopt the budget on September 5th after getting all that additional input.
Okay, thank you very much. I want to make one, take a moment, because we'll be hurrying after the next one. So my understanding is that it is possible that this might be former Chairman Harris's last meeting after 6 years of service on Type A and Type B, and I just wanted to, personally thank him, but I'm sure everyone thanks him for his service in getting Type B off the ground and moving it forward.
Yeah,
So,
thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, and then I guess Ms. Holbrook is now officially the Assistant City Manager. Congratulations to you.
She knows how to get a budget passed.
Yeah. Okay, with that, I'll call the meeting adjourned at 2:20. It's 2:25, and I'd like to call to order the Corpus Christi Business and Job Development Corporation Type A meeting. If you would please call the roll, Madam Secretary.
President Lee Pagan Olivari,
Present.
Alan Wilson, Scott Harris,
Here.
Jesus Jimenez,
Here.
Robert Temez, John Valls.
Here.
Thank you. Would anybody like to make a public comment? Was there anybody that?
No, ma'am.
Okay, no one had received any public comments. Okay, so I'm looking for approval of the minutes of the Type A June 12th meeting.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
The next item is a financial report by Ms. Casas.
Good afternoon, Alma Casas, Interim Director of Finance. We've got the financials for the 8 months ended May 31st. Starting with the Seawall Fund, we have a beginning fund balance of $20,103,467, revenues of $6.4 million, expenditures $6.3 million, and ending fund balance of $20.2 million. And of note, our committed fund balance in Seawall, our Seawall CIP fund, is $38.6 million. Next slide, or do I? Okay, there. Thank you. Seawall CIP, we've got $54.7 million in active projects, and our expenditures to date are $16 million. Next slide, please. Arena Fund, beginning fund balance $15.6 million, revenues year to date $6.3 million, expenditures year to date $7.3 million, and ending fund balance $14.6 million. Moving on to Economic Development, beginning fund balance $1.7 million, revenues $47,000, expenditures year to date $439,000, ending fund balance $1.3 million. Total outstanding commitments and expenditures of $1.26, available fund balance of $88,606, available for affordable housing $10,000, and available for economic development $78,606. Moving on to affordable housing, our commitments, we have Fish Pond, the Alma at Greenwood, and Home Buyer Assistance Program for a total of $670,560. Major business incentives, we've got International Consulting Engineers, Texas A&M Civil and Industrial Engineering, DMC Foundation Process and Instrumentation Technology, and Whataburger Field upgrades. That's a total of $591,000. And then brings us to our sales tax revenue update. Again, we're trending up. We are over budget in revenues for $503,000. Any questions?
Any questions? Mr. Wilson?
The Alma at Greenwood, where on Greenwood is that?
I don't know. Do we know where in Greenwood? Where that project is?
It's across from the Westside Clinic, the Greenwood Westside Clinic, the Christi.
Is it Galahar
Yeah,
and Greenwood?
right.
So they haven't even started yet? Okay.
They're still working on the financial stack, so there may be some concern on the project financing. Yep.
Any other
Can't get rid
questions?
of that Type A money, can we? Okay. Is that it? Anyone else? Okay, moving on
Thank
to
you.
item 4. This is a motion authorizing the amendment of the bylaws for the Corpus Christi Business and Job Development to provide for automatic resignation of a director in the event of unexcused absences.
Madam President, I make a motion to approve.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I just wanted to give the attorney a little exercise, okay? Okay, number 5. Resolution affirming the,
Number 3.
oh, I'm sorry, I'll come back to that. I missed it. Thank you very much. Let's go ahead with number 5, and I'll go back to number 3. Resolution affirming the Corpus Christi Business and Job Development Corporation investment policy and strategy for fiscal year 2024-23.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Thank you.
Thank you.
Getting everybody's exercise. Okay, I'm going to go back to item 3. This is a motion authorizing the appropriation and expenditure of additional seawall funds in the amount of $300,000 from the unreserved fund balance in the seawall fund for the for the Art Museum Johnson Building piping replacement and authorizing the transfer from the seawall fund to the seawall capital fund. And I made a slight change in that caption. Mr. Edmonds, are you going to tell us about that?
Good afternoon, Madam President, board members. This item is a request for appropriation of unreserved fund balance to address a somewhat urgent maintenance situation there in the Art Museum. This is the building on the south side, and it's the hot water line from the boiler, the loop. The pipe is in seriously degraded condition, and there's various leaks, and we're concerned if we don't get that replaced, that it's going to cause damage within the building.
Mr. Edmonds or Ms. Holbrook, could you explain just quickly our responsibility relative to that building as opposed to the responsibility of the Art Museum or the university relative to that building?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Edmonds.
The leasee is responsible for the routine maintenance of the building, and this is considered a capital maintenance item. And so the city or the Type A fund, as the owner of that building, is responsible for these larger capital maintenance projects for the cost of these.
Are there any questions about this?
Make a motion to approve.
Yeah, moved.
Okay.
All right, a second.
Let's let Mr. Harris do it.
Go for it.
Second by Mr. Walls.
I'll second.
I did want to make a comment that Ms. Holbrook assured me that they are going to, and I'm sure the city, at the city manager's behest, that they are going to take a more active role in the management of this contract and ensuring that there is appropriate maintenance ongoing so that we know that's going on.
Right, yeah, so we have already done that in the 4 years I've been here. So in the past, even though the Art Museum, the Science Museum, and the Art Center are all city assets, city buildings, the city needed to be more involved, more engaged. So we had a facility assessment done of those 3 buildings. The engineering department, Jeff Edmonds is here, is taking a more active role in the implementation of those plans, as well as the construction oversight that's being done. We're managing it as opposed to the leasee.
Right.
Because there are buildings, and plus they don't have the technical capability on their staff.
Well, and the other thing is, you know, any ignored maintenance becomes an emergency capital investment
Right.
at some point, so
Yeah,
anyway.
agreed. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All those in favor of approval of this item?
Aye.
All those opposed? No? Hearing none opposed, the motion passes unanimously. Okay, back to a budget. Thank you.
Good afternoon, board members. Eddie Houlihan with the
6.
Office of Management and Budget. This is the Type A proposed budget that was also presented to you in June. There's a few changes since June. First here again, as in the other fund, the revenues have not changed since June, so we're budgeting revenues in '24 of $9,529,580. Expenditures actually are less. In June, it were $19,715,000. Today, the total expenditure budget is $17,105,698. Next slide. Revenues, sales tax of $8,895,337, and some interest income of $634,000, totaling to $9.5 million. And expenditures, some admin of 10. Let's see. Go ahead. Next slide. Admin of $10,000, and then some general fund support of $150,000. Debt service of $2,860,000 for the seawall fund, and then the transfer to the CIP, $14,085,000, down from $16,695,000 in June. We'll go over the details of that. And you can see in the transfer to CIP, the original budget did not include any projects, but at mid-year, the water garden fountain of $3.5 million, and the pier replacement and dredging additional dollars for that project were added in mid-year, totaling the $5.9 million. Next slide. These next two slides are a listing of all the current projects totaling $47.9 million. The project that was just discussed is the third item down, the piping replacement project for $300,000. Go to the next slide. And then down to the bottom there, you can see that the reserve left over that are derived from completed projects and interest earnings of $6,171,000, totaling the $47,921 for all the current projects. Next slide. This is just a slide of the 23 approved seawall budget, and as I mentioned, there were no projects initially budgeted in 23. Next slide, and moving to the 24 budget, we're the $14,085,000 total there for the 23-24 column, and the big change here was the new number 11, the new People's Boardwalk repairs. In June, we had that number at $3,660,000, but it now reduced to $1,050,000. And then year two, 24-25, the new People Street Boardwalk repairs currently at $7.8 million for fiscal year 25. Next slide. This is just a seawall debt service fund. Revenues come in from the seawall fund, and we turn around and make the principal debt payments. Next slide. And moving to the arena. Again, no revenues did not change in this area, so we budget total revenues of $9,347,000. Expenditures increase in this area from in June we had $9.8 million, currently at $11.2 million. We have the detail of that in a couple of slides. Next slide. RENA also, sales tax of the same as Seawall, $8,895,000. Some interest and investment income of $452,000, totaling the $9,347,000. Next slide. This is the same slide you saw. The last two items changed some. So we have the admin, some maintenance and repair of $400,000 that we budget annually. Then the general fund support, then the arena debt service is $3,523,000. The transfer to the arena CIP in June was $860,000, now increased to $1,008,000. We have the detail of that in a slide or two. And then the transfer to visitors for the facilities in June was $4,874,000 and is currently at $5,340,000. The two, again, as in the seawall, that we didn't budget anything for that transfer to arena CIP was nothing in the original budget, and the $6.5 million is for the chillers and some landscaping around the building for the totaling the $6.5 million. Next slide. This is a total of the transfer to the arena CIP. There was the Zamboni water filtration project was in this area. We moved it to an OVG capital item, so it's still in the budget, just put in a different area. And then we did this the $1 million there, the last item of the 4-item list there. Deferred maintenance was a project that was added since June.
Could you explain that project?
Sure. It's a project that consists of the replacement and improvement to the mechanical systems that include the refrigerant monitoring system, the water treatment system, ammonia, safety pressure release valves, electrical distribution equipment, and building automation system controls, and life safety egress door hardware repairs. Do you have more? Are you more familiar with that? No?
Okay. Close enough. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Next slide, please. And this is the total of the transfer to the visitors. There at the top, the professional services, this is per the contract. In June, we just had a placeholder, which was the 150,000 from the previous contractor. It's now the estimate is about 480. It includes quite a bit of incentives in that particular contract that weren't there before. Of course, we have the ice plant rental for the hockey and other activities. And then down at the bottom there, the co-promotion, we had that in here last, you'll see in the next slide that we actually have $1,350,000 budgeted for co-promotion, but we already have $825,000 already that was unspent sitting in the visitors fund. So we don't need to transfer the full $1,350,000. Then capital projects of $3,550,000. Detail of that here on the next slide. There's a co-promotion item. So this is where we budgeting $1,350,000, but we only need to transfer $525,000. Same list that you saw in June. Next slide. And this is all the particular projects that OVG will be facilitating. So the basketball hoops there at the top, and then on the Zamboni water filtration I mentioned on the right-hand side, about 3/4 of the way down for the 60,000. Totaling to $3,550,000. Next slide. This is just a debt service. Again, the dollars come from, the revenue comes from the arena fund, and then we turn around and make the debt payment. Next slide. And lastly, the business and job development. This remained the same from June. Of course, there's no sales tax revenue, just a small amount of interest, $9,884, and then expenditures of $1,125,000. Next slide. This is just the revenue interest, and then the next slide. And this is the $1,125,000 budgeted for the affordable housing, $670,560 left over, $560 left over in that area. And then the major business incentive project of $455,000. We have the detail of that here in the next slide of those two areas. The affordable housing consists of the fish pond development. You can see all these were budgeted in '23, and we don't expect to expend any of it. Fish pond development for $500,000, the Almec Greenwood for $165.60, and then a small amount for home buyer assistance of $10,000. And in the major business incentives, next slide, the industrial engineering program at A&M for $455,096. I'll stand by for any questions.
Are there any questions? Mr. Wilson, I'm sorry. Saw that.
Eddie, I had two minor questions, just banker curious. What kind of yield do we get on cash that's laying around now?
About 4.5.
Short-term rates are gone up quite a bit.
It depends. So in our intergovernmental pools, I think we're between 3 and 4, and then if they're invested in longer-term bonds or agencies, that kind of stuff, it's a little bit higher than that.
Okay.
So, but a lot of this stuff is held in our intergovernmental pools, because they're kind of, we don't know a lot of times when we're gonna spend them, so we don't necessarily lock them in for
Yeah,
longer terms.
they have to be liquid.
Yeah,
The other-
can I just add to that, just so
Sure.
people are clear? We have staff that daily, that's what they do is invest our cash that we have. So there's an investment strategy. We have financial advisors that help us as well, because the cash that's not used is invested for return on investment.
The opportunity cost in the past few years was, next to nothing, but it's
Right.
changed, at least in the
Yeah.
short term.
Right.
The other question I had is I noticed the debt service went up 72,000. Is that a result of a higher interest rate, refinance? Why would the debt service go up?
No, it's set off of, set amortization tables whenever we sell that debt. So, that does not fluctuate. So it was just a function of, how the amortization table was laid out as when with the bond maturities.
So they pushed it,
Back in.
yeah, back into.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, if you go back to page 8, please, or slide 8. Quick question, something that struck me.
There you go.
Okay, so it's hard to read. The 7.8, that we already approved those boardwalk repairs, right? You're just showing us the year that you expect them to
extend it.
occur
Correct.
in the CIP?
Right.
Yeah, okay. And so the only real changes to the CIP overall are the $300,000. Everything else was kind of a continuation of what we had approved in previous budgets or increases to offset the cost of a given item, except for the 300,000.
Right.
There's nothing new.
Some
is
things were
what-
just pushed back.
Yeah.
The Harbor Point East was pushed back a year, the capital repair item, so yes.
Okay, now go to page 16. So let me look at this. There is an item in there, and I'm just asking because I thought we had already upgraded the boxes, the suites. And there's another $500,000 on the suites. I mean,
The suite refurbish?
mm-hmm.
Yeah, our general manager's there. Daniel, can you answer that? Daniel Malise, our general manager of the facility with OVG 360.
Does anybody remember that but me?
Daniel Lease, General Manager, American Bank Center. So the suite refurbished previously was the club suite, which is right on the corner. It's one that was upgraded previously. This would be to update all the other suites that are in there.
Okay.
So it's just, there was one part of it. This is to do the rest of it.
Okay, I thought we did that, and you all had a long discussion about it. Okay, thank you very much. I think, Mr. Valls, did you have a comment about sort of the promotion? I thought it was,
Yeah, can you find the page on there? It's towards the,
keep going.
it's towards the end. The amount of money for promotion, for concert promotion certificate.
Okay.
No, it's back the other way then. It's promotions, yeah.
15, there you go.
Oh, yeah, right there. Yeah, the concert, so I thought we had put more in that. How is that being used? Because I'm noticing that a lot of, is this one right here? Yeah, okay. So how is that money, of the 125, attract new events, concerts, talent buying, of the 125, how much of that was spent this year?
In total, we have about 70,000 left over, which will be spent in an event we're going to announce next Monday. So we will have spent all 650 of the previous funding. When we spend it to incentivize promoters to bring events here, the Parker McCollum, Chris Stapleton, those types of things. That's where we're utilizing those funds.
So when these acts are performing, are they on a circuit, like they'll play San Antonio, Corpus, Sugar Land, the smaller type of venues. Because I'm noticing that a lot of the concerts in the San Antonio area, I've been to a few recently, and they're kind of playing all around us, but they're not coming here. You know, Jackson Brown is going to Midland, you know, and he's not coming here.
Yeah, so that's part of where our booking strategy has been recently, where we've been going on more booking trips to different parts of the country, New York, Nashville. We spent a couple of days out in Houston with our Live Nation representatives, speaking with our AEG representatives, trying to get that, kind of give them a little bit of an idea of what we have going on and what our abilities are. I think we've seen a big uptick in some of the traction we're getting with that. It just is going to unfortunately take a little while when these tours are scheduling out 18, sometimes 24 months out. We're still trying to get in on some of those cycles, which is what we're starting to see now. I think one of the great examples of our utilization of the Type A funding was for WWE SmackDown, where we brought that in just this past April. 7,500 people in the building, and I mean, that's a globally televised show. So there's a couple more events that we are doing similar to that, where we're leveraging that funding to get the facility out and on national and global television markets to kind of drive a little bit more of that.
Is the 250 enough? Because I'm not really noticing a lot of big acts coming here. They're playing all around us. But
And again, like it's trying to get into those cycles, right? To where the way the business works is we're at the mercy sometimes of the promotional companies and what buildings they have already on their dockets. So getting into that a little bit earlier from our perspective and incentivizing the agencies is one of the new tactics that we're using from a booking perspective. The unfortunate part is, again, when we're working 18 to 24 months out, all the work we've done over the last 8-10 months, we won't start to recognize that until probably later on in the fall, when we start to see some of those things come to fruition.
Okay. And one last question, not related to this, but when are the naming rights going to be available? I don't know when they expire, but
our current naming rights deal goes through September of 2024, and we are currently working on those things internally as we speak.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Appreciate your help.
Real quick question. Explain to me the bottom of that page, Eddie, please, Mr. Houlihan. On this slide, I meant to ask about this.
Which slide?
15.
15, okay.
Unspent proceeds already allocated of $825,000, all right, which I assume you brought back in, and FY proposed transfer of $525. So are you saying we're taking the balance that wasn't spent plus $525? Is that
Yes.
what that's saying?
Yes, correct.
Okay. It's just a little odd. Okay. All right. So what we're looking for now is a motion to approve the budget for 2024 operating budget for the Seawall Fund, the Seawall Debt Service Fund, the Arena Fund, the Arena Debt Service Fund, and the Business Development Fund.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Mr. Harris?
Second.
Mr. Wilson? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Say no. I will mention that I know we still have 2024 to get through with some of these business incentives, but does anybody have a plan for how we're going to spend that ever remaining balance in the Type A economic development? I'm just putting that forward for discussion. $86,000. We're never going to get rid of this money, are we?
Amy, I think we talked about this. Isn't there some point that we can transfer economic development to B?
You can do that if the Type A corporation gets dissolved.
But
We
we're
are
not
not
gonna be
dissolving our Type A corporation, so we can't do that.
So we just need to figure out how to, it's really not that imminent. It'll happen next year because 2024 is the last year that we have an outstanding incentive, right, in the Type A sales tax, I believe. Go.
Can you combine Type A economic development funds with Type B in a single project?
Yes, you can.
Okay, that's how we'll do it.
So we could do it by you know, we could do something like we could fund X amount of Del Mar out of, I mean, I'm just not picking on them, but we could have done 60,000 in internship out of type A and the remainder out of B or something like that. We can do that, right? Okay. So be looking around for that opportunity. Okay, with that, let's move along to the engineering, if there's no further questions. The Engineering Services Quarterly Report.
Good afternoon, Madam President, board members. Jeff Edmonds, Director of Engineering Services. And, oh, the button doesn't work anymore. Okay, next slide, please.
Repairs coming not a moment too soon, huh? I can barely read this thing.
First one is the Art Museum repairs. These were the building envelope repairs. This is under construction and should be wrapping up this month. Next. Art Center repairs, you've probably seen there's a lot of activity going on over there. There's about midstream through construction, and that's projected to complete in December of this year. Next. Okay, Water Garden, you probably noticed some activity down there finally. We are actually under construction, and we're projecting completion May of next year. Next slide.
It's hard to believe.
Okay, this is an exciting project for Jonathan back there. This is the big dock replacement project, and council awarded that contract late last month, so we are officially under construction on that. And completion is projected for April of next year. Next. The People's Boardwalk is still in the design phase. We're 90% design on that. There's some discussion going on about what to include in the scope around Harrison's Landing. I'll probably have more information on that in the next update. Next. The boat haul out facility, we have started the design on that. They awarded that contract to Turner Ramirez, and we don't have a schedule yet on that going forward. Next. And the Cooper's Boat Facility, that was awarded to Richter Architects, and that is also in the design phase. And next. This is still in the selection phase. This is the flood wall upgrades at the Science Museum. I think we have kind of narrowed that down, and we should be starting in scoping and negotiation, but it's probably going to be another month or two before that contract goes to City Council. Next. And this is in the same phase, so unfortunately, this was kind of in the tail end of that last round of RFQs, so these are just now coming up to the top in terms of getting these engineering contracts going. Next. That's it. We took the Salt Flats Levee project off. That one's complete and over and done with.
It's done?
Yes.
Yes. So the only other thing we have to do is we still have the assessment being done. It's important, is the assessment being done by HDR? Is that still?
That's for the breakwater?
Yes.
Yeah, there's a study that's going to be done to look at future improvements for the breakwater system. And that, I think that's also in the selection part.
So what we haven't done at all yet, and something for y'all to be thinking about, I'm not proposing it, but is to think about with what we're seeing in terms of changes in flooding and in storm intensity, is there anything we should be doing proactively a little bit that we haven't considered yet? So just something for engineering to be thinking about. You know, we're seeing some rather major changes. So.
Well, I think at some point, and this might be something we want to include in the CIP, is to do a study on how we're going to address sea level with a downtown flood protection system.
Okay.
I can see where there might be some projects that.
When you get a 3-minute lull in your day, you can think about that. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Redmond. So I had asked that, I'll ask the board their pleasure since we're running a little long this meeting. I'd asked for a briefing on the convention center project. Do y'all want to hold that to next month, or do you want to go forward with that?
Ready?
Okay, let's go. Just being, sometimes people have. And I'll say that, of course, Ms. Ulrich agreed, but I happened to turn on the city council. I don't watch regularly, and I noticed that there was a discussion about possible funding sources for this convention center project, and type B and type A were mentioned, and so I said, maybe we need a little briefing on that. So she was planning on it anyway, but thank you very much for being here.
Yes. Heather Hilbert, Assistant City Manager. Next slide, please. We have been through, over the last about year and a half, a journey on looking at the convention center, headquarters hotel, entertainment district, and our needs for the downtown area. We engaged Hunden Strategic Partners, who is a leader in the industry, on to look at our needs, do a facility type assessment, looking at what we have downtown, what we need, and working very closely. We had got together a working group that consisted of city staff from Visit Corpus Christi, staff from some of the local hotels, along with other citizens who were involved in that process. So we've come through, we've presented to council a couple of times and have received support to continue moving forward through the process. So where we are right now is looking at applying a finance. So before we want to move any further, we want to see, is this something that realistically can be paid for by the city, and what sources of funding would we use to build that financial stack on it? So when we refer to the convention center project, we referred that would all include everything within the American Bank Center. So it includes the arena, the convention center, Selena Auditorium. Then it also includes a headquarters hotel, which would be connected to the convention center, along with an entertainment district that would be in the area and part of that project. Next slide, please. So, like I said, we went through and looked at all of the different funding sources that we may be able to tap into for these projects. So, the city was included in House Bill 5012, which allowed us to utilize, participate in the project finance zone revenue. And what that is that allows us to tap into the state hotel occupancy, along with sales tax and mixed beverage tax. So we're able to utilize the incremental growth in those three revenue sources over the next 30 years, which would come from hotels and attached facilities within a 3-mile radius of what we are defining as our project, which would be the convention center. In addition to that, we have our existing hotel, our local, so remember with hotel occupancy along with sales tax, you have a local portion and a state portion. So the House Bill 5012, or the project finance zone, allows us to tap into the state's portion. And then when we move into the hotel occupancy tax, that's the city's portion. So currently we have a 9% hotel occupancy tax. 2% of that is a venue tax, which goes directly to the operation and maintenance of the convention center complex, along with the 7% hotel occupancy tax. That is where it goes into our hotel occupancy tax fund, helps support Visit Corpus Christi and a lot of our other utilization that we use of that hotel occupancy tax. Then we have our TERS number 3, which is our downtown TERS. To utilize that fund, we would just need to add the convention center as a project as a allowed project to the project and financing plan. We do have the type B, which the convention center would be an eligible project under type B. And then we have type A. And so what we're looking at is a possible repurpose of both 1/8 cents collected, that is currently being collected for the arena and the seawall, possibly repurposing that, so combining it to a 1/4 cent. And we'll talk about that in a little on the next slides.
One second, Mr. Boss, did you? Yeah.
I did, thank you. Thank you, Madam President. What's the state portion of the hotel occupancy tax?
It is 6%, but we already we received 2% to help support our beaches, so we'd be able to tap into the 4%.
The full balance, all 4%?
Yes.
Okay.
above the base year. So this is off of a base year, so we're able to utilize any increment that's grown over that base year.
Right, okay. Thank you, Heather.
Sure. Okay, next slide. So we broke the funding down into 3 different categories. One is the funding, the revenue that is known and available. So we have historical collections for that and is available currently to be allocated to the project. Then we have the known and eligible for allocation. So those are revenue sources that have historical collections, but they're currently being allocated for other purposes. And they are eligible to be allocated all or in part to the project. And then we have the sources of revenue that are unknown and required. We don't have historical collections for these, but they are required to be allocated to the project. Next slide. So how that breaks down is our known and available, the 2% city hotel occupancy tax is available, and we do have known collections, historical collections on that. Known and eligible for allocation includes our 7% of the hotel occupancy tax, the funding within TERS number 3, the funding within Type A and Type B. And then finally, the unknown and required is the revenue that will be collected through the project finance zone. That can only be used for this project. Next slide, please. So in looking at the Type A repurposing, what we have today is we have 1/4 cent of sales tax. 1/8 of that cent goes to the arena in support of the debt service along with the maintenance and operations of the arena. And then 1/8 cent goes to the seawall, which again is for the debt service on the seawall, along with the maintenance and operations of the seawall. Currently, the arena 1/8 cents expires in 2025 when the debt service is paid in full. The seawall 1/8 cent expires in 2026 when the debt service is paid in full. So these expirations can be accelerated with the retirement of that debt. So if the choice was made to use possibly cash balances to retire that earlier, we could do that before the 2025 or the 2026. So currently, 1/4 cent produces about 16 million, which actually, according to the budget, it's actually almost 17 million, I think, it's about 17 million. It has increased some. Next slide, please. So the process to repurpose that would be that we would need to call an election and take it to the voters in November of 2023. And this would take it to them to approve the reallocation of the 1/4 cents after all the existing debt is paid in full. So if this is done, the election is done prior to the expiration, it ensures no interruption in the collection. Because one of the things is if we were to allow this to expire, other entities could possibly utilize those funds, take it to a voter, and take those away from the city. This would be a single measure and ballot proposition. And what we're proposing is that we would take the 1/4 cent and it would be allocated to the convention center complex, which would include the seawall. And we'll talk a little bit more about what the definition of the convention center complex would be. And then it would also be allocated to the 5 regional parks, which include Bill Wett, Labonte, West Guth, Salinas, and Cole Parks, and then also for commercial and industrial streets. Next slide, please. So if this does go to election and it is repurposed, approved by the voters to repurpose, there would be a creation of a special purpose entity governed by City Council to manage the Convention Center complex redevelopment. And then Type A and the city would enter into an interlocal agreement to transfer the revenues. The parks and street, we'd have to figure out how exactly this would go, but technically, basically, the parks and the street funding would go to the city to be allocated to those projects, and then the convention center complex funding would go to the special purpose entity to combine all those different sources of revenue. So in working with our legal counsel along with our financial advisors, we are proposing to do the special purpose entity so that we can, since we're dealing with multiple lines, multiple types of revenue, this would consolidate all that revenue into one place. So as we issue bonds or have those expenses, it'd be under the control of one entity. Next slide, please. So what would be in the proposition would be the convention center complex. And so currently, we propose that the complex would include the arena, the convention center, the Selena Auditorium, the seawall, along with the new headquarters hotel. So within the proposition, this convention center complex definition could be changed by city council. So if after the purposes are fully expended, say for the convention center project, then it could be allocated to possibly museums, or that definition could be expanded to include other things that are within that same contiguous area. Next slide, please. So this is a lot of words and numbers and colors just to show that right now, based off of the revenues that we have identified and what the present value of that over the next 30 years would total about $467 million, which we are looking at the total cost for the city would be about 500 million. And so based off of this, we feel like this is a feasible project. That we do have the financial stack with the repurposing of the Type A funding, along with the utilization of some of the other revenues, that this project could be fully financed. Next slide. And that does conclude my presentation.
Mr. Wilson has a question.
Heather, what does the Type A corporation look like after the special purpose entity is formed? It would be reduced, right?
It would. The responsibilities of the Type A Corporation Board would be greatly reduced because it would be defined within the interlocal agreement how the funds would be allocated.
So is it anticipated that the council itself would be the board members of this special purpose?
There is a
entity?
possibility of that, yes.
Thank you.
Sure.
So I have a question because I feel like I'm missing a little bit. So I'm not thinking the city plans to build the hotel.
No.
Okay. So what do you get out of this? I mean, what is this? I mean, you say convention center, but I don't see what happens. I mean, what is the plan? Expansion-wise or whatever?
Exactly.
Rebuilding or
So the funding would go towards the expansion and renovation of the convention center. Along with the arena, the audio. So we're talking about ABC Center in total. So this would be the expansion and renovation of all the facilities within the ABC. Then it would also allocate funding would be available for, while the city would not build a conference center hotel, we're proposing that there would be a parking structure that would be part of that would be 100% the city's responsibility, along with a portion of the cost, because we are requiring more meeting rooms and things like that to help complement the convention center. And so,
So do you have a number like doubling the size? I mean, because I guess one of my concerns is we're spending money on the arena, but now you're talking about changing the arena. I mean, I don't know what this project is still.
I mean, this is adding, and I don't have the stats right in front of me, but it is greatly expanding the size of the convention center. So the hotel we're looking at is about 600 rooms. And so looking at the size of conventions that we would want to bring in, this would be expanding, creating a new ballroom in addition to the Henry Garrett ballroom. So expanding that out, expanding the footprint of the building itself. Utilizing, updating and upgrading all of the meeting rooms, reconfiguring where the kitchen is. I mean, this is a major overhaul and expansion of the convention center itself. Convention center complex, which includes all of those different entities.
So is there a study that says this is what you need to do?
Yes.
And this is is there a way that we could get both?
You sure can.
This presentation and that email to everybody?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we have about, it's a several hundred page.
I mean, I don't know about y'all, but I don't know what I'm buying here.
Report, exactly, report and a study. It's a several hundred page that Hunden Strategic Partners put together.
Well,
And
we'll
it does show the feasibility, it shows the need, it shows the recommended expansion, a preliminary kind of footprint of what that would look like, and where our deficiencies are within the current complex.
Okay.
So yes, we have a full report.
So
on
I
that.
personally have one other comment.
Sure.
In the times we live in, I'm very concerned about not trying to keep some type of seawall money. I think we've done good job, as good as we can do right now. Maybe we need to do more. Maybe we need to keep sinking funds in that and not try to take all that out, because I'm afraid if we put all our eyes on this real neat new thing, we won't have the money to continue the maintenance that we've done. But we've also got a lot of other areas in our city that probably need similar kinds of addressing, including the parks along Ocean Drive, all the way out. So I'm nervous about not trying to take that quarter of a cent and not try to look at it in a different sort of sustainability.
Sure.
As a sustainability
Exactly. So the, the convention, the seawall is included as part of that convention center complex.
Just that one.
No, it would be all the way down. We would propose that the seawall in its current state would go all the way down to past about to McGee Beach, where we define the seawall right now. That would be included, not just the seawall that would be right in front of the American Bank Center. The other thing is that we will have, even with all the projects that we have proposed right now against the seawall fund, we anticipate that we will still have several $1 million in that fund balance that can be put aside for reserves to be able to be utilized immediately if there is a challenge or if there's a needed repair on the seawall that would not necessarily roll into the ABC complex. We could definitely keep that aside as a reserve.
So, but you've included Cole Park, but not past Cole Park.
No, because we're defining it as regional parks, the larger regional parks that would truly, be, while the smaller neighborhood parks do help provide that sense of place, we're focusing on.
No, I'm talking about their storm protection. I mean, I'm talking about their storm protection capabilities with the seawalls that exist, not the park.
Yeah.
That seawall structure that really actually continues.
Okay.
No, it ends at McGee Beach. The one
now,
after
your
McGee Beach is not owned by
definition
the
and my
city.
definition are going to be different, okay? It may not be the seawall, but there are storm protection improvements that extend either on private property or public property all the way down shoreline.
Right, but
Ocean Drive.
the eligible funding for the current seawall fund ends at McGee Beach, so that's where I think we're
I
proposing
understand
leaving it there.
totally, yeah. But I'm saying in the future, I'm just concerned that we will have the money we need to really make those structures in those parks and even all around more resilient than we do now.
We'd have to have some preventive maintenance funding somewhere along the line.
Yeah, that is more than just
There's no
your
construction
definition
on
of
them.
the seawall,
Yeah, but that would be something that would need, and that's not something
can
that.
look at,
That
yeah.
necessarily
I'm just-
we utilize this money for. It is something that can be programmed within the general fund CIP.
Sure.
On a longer term.
This could be
project.
major money.
Yes, exactly, and that's the other thing is if this works the way that we anticipate it to work, and the numbers are behind it, the feasibility is behind it, we see the need for it, that this could be produce more money than we could ever imagine. So wanting to make sure that we have those other uses that are there beyond just the convention center project.
And why not Water's Edge? I didn't see it as a regional park.
It's not a regional park. We define our regional parks by how many acres are in them, and so Water's Edge is not a regional park. Actually, it is a smaller park because there's a whole series of parks in that area. You've got the.
But you could consolidate them into.
It is something that we could look at.
It sure is being used. I don't know what you consider to be a regional park, but it's.
Yeah, like I said, it's the definition of regional park has how many acres it has, and it's over so many acres qualifies.
So we might want to look at the definition of what
Exactly.
a regional park is before we.
We could do that, yes.
Yeah.
And probably what we would do in the proposition would just say regional parks, not necessarily name those 5 parks. So if we do develop future regional parks.
Park ideas or concepts, it may vary
Exactly.
over time what we
Yes.
decide is a regional park
Yes.
or not.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Because this would also, on the proposition, this would be this would not have an expiration date because it's not tied to debt service. And so the way this proposition is written is that this would continue on even past the convention center.
Yes, Mr. Wilson.
You may have said, and I may not have heard it, what kind of timeline do we have on this?
So we're looking at, so as far as, so we've got kind of near timeline and far. So the build out of the convention center, the hotel, entertainment center, we're looking over probably the next 10 years. As far as the convention center and the hotel, we're hoping to be able to take this to voters in November of '23. If it does pass, then
In
we're
November
able.
of '23?
Yes,
So soon?
yes. So we'd be yes. So take it to November '23. If at that point it does not pass, then that allows us to take it again in '24 before the expiration of the current allocation. If it does pass within '23, then we would be able to start moving forward with going out for the RFP process, starting the design, things along those lines. If we were not able to get it, if it was not successful with the voters in '23, then it would delay that timeline a little bit because this project doesn't work without the reallocation of the
So
Type
you're
A
literally,
funding.
though, let me be sure I understand.
Sure.
You're literally talking about going to the voters in 2023 and saying, we are going to take the money that is now, the balance that is, of years, that is now in the seawall, and the balance of the years in the arena, and we are going to reposition those, and it's July.
As of the expiration of these, yes, so not until
No, you
2025
said
and
and refund the
2026.
bonds and do it sooner.
We said we could.
Oh,
That
okay.
was a possibility. No, that is not, that is a
okay.
possibility.
Okay.
If
It's
the
like-
will is there to go ahead and pay, but like I said, if we wanted to leave that money there for reserves,
I got it.
we would need to leave that and not necessarily defease the bonds. But no, that is just a possibility. So I think it would be either at the expiration of the debt service, so in '25 and '26.
But you are taking that $0.25 in this.
Not until the expiration, not until the expiration. It would not be expired until the debt
All right.
is
But
fulfilled.
we did B before A expired. That's why I'm getting confused,
We voted
Heather.
for B before A expired, but the B didn't go into effect until after
Yes,
the A would
but
have
that's
expired.
why
And
I'm
and
saying.
we're doing the same thing
is
here.
the-
Yes.
Is the ballot going to identify A funding when it expires?
Yes.
In 2024 and 2025?
25 and 26, yes.
Or 25 and 26?
Yeah, it would actually be at the satisfaction of the debt service. So I don't know that we would specify in the proposition that it would have to be 25 or 26, but we would not be able to repurpose even with the approval of the voters until that debt service has been satisfied.
Okay, Mr. Wilson.
Sorry, one more question. So is it safe to say that after, if this were approved,
Yes.
Type A repurposed, that nothing that is covered now would go away? We're adding possibilities.
Exactly. So the arena would be included
Included.
in the complex, the definition of the complex. Selena
Convention
Convention Center, the headquarters
Seawall.
hotel, the seawall, exactly.
Yeah.
Entertainment district.
So it's more, not less.
Exactly. So we're able to utilize, because right now there is the restriction on, we can only use the 1/8 cents on the arena. Even if we have needs across the rest of the complex, we're not able to utilize except anywhere but the arena. The seawall, we have utilized it for structures along the seawall that are adjacent to the seawall. I think one of the things we had talked about is possibly narrowing that definition of what the seawall is to qualify what that money could be used for.
So it gives us a lot more flexibility.
It does.
Okay.
It does.
Thank
And
you.
it is not a tax increase. That's one of the things that we have
And
been.
additional revenue sources.
Exactly, and we will be building those sales tax producing facilities and structures within that area.
Mr. Voss.
Thank you, Madam President. So Heather, that would basically just leave the Type A board with Whataburger Field and affordable housing?
No, because actually those funds are no longer being allocated to Type A. They've switched over to Type B. And actually, Whataburger Field is not eligible for Type B funding. So
So-
affordable housing is no
So,
longer in type A.
Oh, that's right, it's not in type A. So what does it do with the type A? I mean, what happens with the type A?
It goes away, but not necessarily until 2025 or 2026.
For clarity, the Type A corporation would remain.
Yes.
Right.
There would be an agreement between the Type A corporation and the city and a special purpose entity on how to handle the funding.
And governments.
Okay.
But we would potentially ultimately go away.
Yeah.
On the type A side. Type B is still
And my
there.
last meeting is when? So,
Okay.
Thank you.
Any comments?
Sure. And I will go ahead and get that complete, the Hunden study out to the board for your review, along with this presentation.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Madam President, would you like to officially adjourn the meeting? Would you like to officially adjourn the meeting?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I called the meeting closed, sorry.